dropping these things on you.
I know. It's
Because there's nothing funner than the fact that you follow and you clean up almost all messes.
People ask me the tens of people that watch this.
Yeah. And someday we're going to have maybe tens of tens.
They ask me, hey, do you get preparation on these podcasts? And I'm like, one time I got a text message with some questions. It happened to be last week.
Right.
Everything else, I'm just walking in and just whatever happens. Some people have that skill. Some people don't.
Well, the fact that you follow is remarkable. I would
rather just go off the cuff than trying to prepare.
Yeah, me too.
Too much stress.
Agree. So I'm going to climb into your world. I want to for a minute, but only for a minute. And because your world's a little bit different than the world I've been used to for 20 years, having jury concerns everywhere I turn. So, except we do family law here. And so I have a little bit of respect for your world. It's judge driven. Mm-hmm. And so there's some like an MVD hearing for a DUI. Somebody wants to contest their license suspension with the MVD. That has nothing to do with the court. And so you go to an MVD hearing, and it's called an ALJ, an administrative law judge. Here's this case. And it's a kangaroo court. It's Jerry Springer meets Judge Judy, kind of like an order of protection. And so we're exposed to some of these things as far as when something is a judge-related or a judge is making the decision. So that's your world in immigration.
Yeah, we have a little bit of mix in that there are rules of procedure, not to the extent that you have, like state obviously has specific rules of procedure, but there's objections and there's different things like that are similar to a criminal trial or something. But for sure, we are talking directly to the judge, not a jury. Our arguments go to the judge. It's different than telling a narrative like you can to a jury. Right. It doesn't kind of exist, but we're limited on what we could do on that, like closing statements and opening statements, different things like that.
So to wire that down or to kind of drill down on that, a judge in immigration has some discretion in some places.
Tons, way more than maybe I would even want.
Right, and you know these places, mm-hmm. and so you know where to visit, because that's your jury, and so that's what makes what you do very. That's why it's an expert profession. I mean, you're an expert in immigration because of those little nuance. Judge has this entire life of your client depends on how this judge looks at this client.
Yeah, and I've never even thought about it. What you're saying, I mean, maybe I'm going somewhere else, but something that's different can be a positive and a negative. So for you, who knows who your jury is going to be, right? You get in there and you've got to play to whatever jury, which would be fun for me. It's something that I would maybe even be interested in experiencing. But for me, it's more
you're weird.
The experience of knowing certain judges, and sometimes it's a new judge, and we have to go through the years of trying to figure out what that judge wants. But you're absolutely right. There are judges that have different sensitivities to different issues, and some that'll be way more amenable to agree with the department, meaning our opposing side, the Department of Homeland Security, than with us, and we've got to play different games with them. And so, it's very judge-centric. So the strategy is more of learning what the judge wants, what he wants to hear. Some judges want to hear flowery arguments. Some don't want to hear anything like that and want straight to the issue.
Right, black and white, give it to me straight.
Some will even come in and say, hey, they'll even push the parties to concede to like 2 or 3 of the requirements right off the bat on evidence only, and then just say, hey, let's stick to the discretionary hardship or whatever else.
Right.
And actually kind of love those judges.
Right. They're kind of the no nonsense. Let's skip to the end. Let's streamline it and let's get to what matters.
And sometimes they'll even put the pressure on the department to say, really, are we going to litigate every issue as to whether the guy was here 10 years, he's got bills, let's move on type of thing. So that's good.
So that also kind of lends to the prosecutors there, likely are come and go prosecutors.
We've had some lifers. I've had some that are there that are still there, and many of them have become judges. So now I'm in front of them.
Oh, are they
They
easier
tend to
to
pull from the department side more than our side,
Hmm,
on the judges' side.
that seems to make sense to me.
The ones that are in the department are more likely to continue to have a government job, and I think when you're on the private side, it's a little bit harder to
Yeah.
move to that
Right.
side.
So, yeah, that world, because we have a little taste of it, but not a continuous, consistent taste of it. Because even the MVD thing that I brought up, or a judge that's hearing an OOP in a municipal court, or even in a justice court, these judges, are different. Municipal, a little bit different, probably somewhat closer to what you're describing.
Probably.
Because those judges tend to stay for quite a long time, and have we understand which ways they lean, but at the end of the day, we're talking about an OOP, not somebody's life, somebody's life, in whether or not should I stay or should I go, and oftentimes families, children.
Yeah, there's a
lot of stake
that's
here
going on. Yeah.
And so for me, it would be like a no-brainer. I want Westover on my immigration case because of those little nuances that we kind of touched on last week with that individual couple that came in that was young and really had a lot going for them, pretty sharp, but they had been denied twice. And okay, that the same thing we're talking about with judges applies to the paperwork, applies to the whole entire, being able to navigate the system in the way the system can be navigated.
Yeah. Yesterday I had, just speaking of experience, we'll just kind of go off the topic of having experience in doing these, and that helps you, kind of navigate this and where we're at as far as a firm. I had a guy walk into my office. He was my last appointment of the day. And, I'm like, hey, what can I help you with? And he just immediately starts like sobbing. He hands me a piece of paper. He hands me a couple of pieces of paper that basically was a decision. He had just gotten out of an interview at 3:00 for his adjustment of status for a green card application. Pregnant wife. And it did not go well. There was some stuff that came up during the interview that could have been circumvented with an attorney of preparation and whatever else, or at the very least, if they couldn't have been circumvented, I would have told them from the beginning, don't file this.
Right.
And this is a DACA kid, if you know the DACA program, so protected younger kid. And he's like, on the piece of paper, it says you have 30 days to leave the country. And he's like, I just bought a home, $700,000 home. I have a business that employs 150 people. My wife is pregnant. I just got married. And he's just sobbing. I can't leave the country in 30 days. And I had to slow him down a little bit and go, okay, look, USCIS has zero authority to take you out of the country. They're telling you to leave because they have denied your application. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to be knocking down your door. That's not their job. ICE is the one that enforces that. And you still have a right to fight your case in front of an immigration judge. So I'm explaining to him. I'm calming him down a little bit on the stress part of it. But then I just went, all right, man, you just bought a $700,000 house and you didn't have the money to hire an attorney to make sure this went well. And his face just kind of went white and went, yeah, I'm obviously learning my lesson right now on that. And I'm like, yeah, but the lesson's learned too late. Like, I can't fix this. That's the other thing you want to know. Can you fix this? I'm like, I can't. You've already testified to these things in an interview. It's on the record. I can't fix it. And so, yeah.
She's pregnant.
He was just out of his mind. Now, I was able to calm him down, and more than anything else, I was able to say, look, you're going to continue with DACA. You're going to live the same life you've been living, and obviously you've built a good one, so you're going to be okay. But you've now goofed up your chances to ever get a green card unless something changes in law.
Which we're both rooting for, but
yeah. So that's not on this topic of judges, but is on topic of that experience of being in front of judges or having years of experience and knowing the nuances. And so it's with judges, and for us, in similar. So maybe the USCIS interviews would be similar to even your MVD hearings, because there's no civil procedure rules in that. There's not objections and whatever else. I'm simply in front of an officer that does have ultimately a lot of discretion on trying to decide whether somebody gets a benefit or not. And it's somewhat of a hearing. They swear them in, they promise to tell the truth, and those things can be used against them in further benefits and whatever else. And so similarly in that type of situation, I have a lot more freedom there because they're not necessarily judges, they're immigration officers. And so I interrupt a lot more, and I kind of throw my power around a little bit more liberally than I would with a judge. I have to have a lot more decorum with a judge, but very, very similar in that situation. So everything from me, I don't get that outside third party eyes or analysis into my case. It's me and an officer, or me and a judge.
Garner, one of our criminal defense attorneys, Brian, was in an ALJ hearing, MVD hearing, and cop shows up, sworn in, so officer sworn in, and he's probably been to hundreds of these things, and there's a lack of a lot of dots and a lack of a lot of T's crossed, a lot of crosses lacking, a lot of dots lacking, a lot. And Brian just opens up a can right there in the MVD, and this officer. So you don't want to necessarily all the time do that, or frankly, but you're taking the biggest bite of this apple as you can, because you get to re-interview this guy.
Yeah.
And so you take this big bite of this apple if your spidey senses tingle, and let him know the fight's on. And the fight was on, and officer didn't love his lack of work and being made so public or being even talked about at all. And 6 months later, the case is dismissed. After he takes the stand, we just rested, case dismissed. There is no probability of finding any other verdict but an acquittal. So this officer obviously learned a valuable lesson twice. Okay. But that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was heat up Bailey's mic and ask him a question, because there's a mic right in front of you, Bailey. Let's heat that up and ask you a question, because first, have you ever been a client of an attorney?
I have not.
I didn't think so. That's why I asked that freely. What would be on your mind if you're hiring, let's say that you're accused of disorderly conduct outside your house in your neighborhood there, you got into it with your neighbor. So what's on your mind when you're accused of disorderly conduct? I'm hitting you raw.
Probably, like, what can I expect? Like, what's going to happen next? What is the process? What could happen? What are we going to hope for to happen?
Those are all great questions.
Just wanting to see into the future.
See how good a client he would be?
Perfect.
He would be a great client. Would you think the system's fair? Regardless of what happened outside in your cul-de-sac, would you think the system is fair? Have you ever thought of that?
Are you asking him, does he think the system's fair now? Is that what?
Yeah, kind of. Would you think in that application, or even now, do you think the system's fair?
First thoughts is no. Couldn't probably tell you why, but that's just my initial thought.
I find that interesting. He hit it better than I ever could. He doesn't know why, but he knows. So I'm kind of pulling from your world that's that way with the judge and all that stuff. And there's unfairness in that system galore, and some certainly the results that you've seen that are heartbreaking, and results that you've seen that, wow, how'd that happen, and everything in between. You, having, thank goodness, never experienced the system, have a knee-jerk that it's just not fair, or there's just something amiss about it. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So I have represented very few innocent people during all those representing days of doing this and wearing myself to the bone. Very few folks have you represented that don't have an issue with some semblance sometimes of illegality.
Yeah, no matter what, if they're in immigration proceedings, 99% of the time, unless it's the anomaly of like, hey, somebody got accused and they're actually a citizen of the United States. That happens rarely,
Right.
or have a green card that they lost or something like
Right.
that. Everybody at the very least, even if they have zero criminal history, has potentially either overstayed a visa or is legally crossed. And
There's
so
been some
that's easy to
semblance.
prove. So
Yeah.
the charges that the government puts on us, like for you, hey, disorderly conduct, you got to prove innocent or guilty. For the majority of the time, unless it's some kind of legal issue that we say, hey, because for us, we have charges and then, or we have allegations and then charges. So the allegations are the facts. Hey, you entered in on this date and whatever else, you're from this country, you committed this crime. And as a result, the charge is entering without admission, or it's crime involving moral turpitude, or it's deportable crime based on crime of violence, whatever it is. So they relate to each other. So sometimes we'll challenge those charges. Hey, this is not technically a crime of violence, or this is not technically relatable to this allegation. But the majority of the times, all those allegations are just conceded pretty easily.
Right.
I unfortunately can't say that the person's not from Mexico, and I
Right.
can't say that the person didn't enter in the country
Right.
illegally.
So in this hypothetical, same theory, I can't say that Bailey wasn't there.
Yeah.
I can't say that something didn't happen. But here's the thing: the police show up, they're getting your side of the story, then they're going to the other side. They're not there either during this whole thing. So they're gathering. Oftentimes in this scenario I'm painting, they're gathering whatever information, likely going to mail him if he's not obstinate in the situation, which I know Bailey, he likely wouldn't be going toe-to-toe with Officer Friendly. He'd be saying, "Oh, okay, and you'll get something in the mail saying, all right,
Cited
you've
for
been
court.
charged with disorderly conduct. Okay. Bailey's out for a very nice night with his pretty wife, and they're celebrating their, let's say, her birthday for fun. And he takes her to a nice spot, and just a bunch of folks. He's very excited to provide this good dinner, this nice date for her, and then takes her to a nice spot, and just a bunch of idiot things are going on in the restaurant, and he
Gets in a scuffle of some sort.
Bailey starts to say, "Hey, can you guys keep it down? Can you guys keep it down?" I mean, he's a big, strong fellow, so can you guys keep it down? Hey, can you keep it down? And then restaurant staff comes over and asks Bailey and his cute wife to leave, and Bailey and his cute wife decide, why do we have to leave? Rightfully so, likely. In this, I see these things all the time. Why do we have to leave? Why does blah 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 blah? Okay, eventually they leave, but wife forgets her purse. They're at kicked out status now. They're getting 86th. Let me explain what 86th means. You're getting kicked out. Yeah, like booted, like almost thrown out. 86th. It's kind of fun to say 86th. Put it in. Okay, let's make that cool again. So when all the scores of people watching this, score is 10, right?
Sure.
All the scores of people that are subscribing right now. So we have more scores, and they're following this channel. They're going to follow this. Your wife leaves her purse underneath, and so she doesn't want to go back in. So you go back in. Doesn't matter which one you do. That's called a trespass. And now we've got this. Okay, so we see these types of things, right? Okay. What deters Bailey in this case when he comes to an attorney, when he comes to the Arizona firm, what deters him to take a risk at going to trial is Bailey likely was completely in the right, and there probably was plenty of witnesses around there. Where are we going to find them? Where are we going to find them? This is a misdemeanor charge, and if Bailey has, 20, 30, 40 grand to throw at this, then I can go subpoena all the visa records or however people paid that night, and I could get some names and, get a PI guy to hunt them all down and say, you guys remember that night? Oh, yeah, that young man got hosed. Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. Man, those other people were, what happened there? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, all right. But that requires a lot of money and time, and not a lot of folks have all that.
Sure.
And so, and even if they do, and they've never been charged with a crime before.
They look at, well, is it worth it?
Is it worth it? Right. And so there are some people that have it, and there are some people that have a decent story to tell that we're talking about here. Something of that nature, wherein there's two sides of the story, and one side looks a whole lot better than the police, than how it was acted upon. All right, than the police charged. It's actually not the police doing the charging; they submit it. The city and or the state charges it. Okay, so the prosecutors charge it. Okay. If there's a no jail thing and this isn't going to kill me in my job and this, that, and the other, then we kind of end up going that route. Economically, it's a better thing. Also, there's, tools that we have to get these things off the record. But they're, funny enough, never really leave, no matter which way you go. There's this new ceiling out there that I think everybody that has a felony should be taking. And there's some exceptions to it, but most felonies can be sealed with certain, so reach out to us and we'll tell you if you qualify or not with the sealing. Sealings are great. I mean, it goes all the way to the arrest record. It goes all the way to the charging, to all of it. It's sealed. However, if Bailey is trespassing, I don't know, I want his opinion on this too. He's going to have to put down his phone and listen to this because he's researching something, probably about sealing. He's a curious fellow. If you get caught trespassing or charged, I don't like that, get caught. You get charged for trespassing and you're a young fellow that has a whole life in front of you. And if I told you, okay, you can get your case sealed, the arrest record, everything's sealed, but some future employer 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 20 years down, whatever, right? And we prevail, we get it sealed, and it says Bailey Cook, charge, sealed. Okay, what do you think about that? Bailey Cook, here are the charges. That Bailey Cook in real life has no charges, criminally just pristine. But in this scenario, we're pretending like you do. Bailey Cook, sealed. Is all an employer or some opportunity or some place that you want to get a timeshare and I don't know, this would affect something down the road. And you have a trespass and you got that sealed. What looks worse, trespass or sealed? What do you think?
I think sealed probably looks worse because then it's just left to the person's imagination.
Right. So you're hiring a new camera fella in a couple weeks, and this redheaded camera fella says, Reed and his criminal background is sealed. Where's your mind going?
No, I think Bailey's probably on the same track that I would be.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes
it feels like sealed. Like you wouldn't want to seal a trespassing case. I don't know. In my head, I'm like, okay, so this can't be something minor. If you're sealing something, it's because you're trying to hide something. Like as a parent, that's what we always. Well, if you don't want to tell me, it's because it's something. I
love the sealing. I love the fact,
which is not necessarily the truth.
I love the sealing. However, for a trespass, for a disorderly conduct, for a a DUI even, I'm thinking twice, because when I see seal, I'm thinking, you pedophile?
Yeah.
You murder somebody? We got assault with a deadly, grand theft auto, human trafficking. I'm thinking bigger than a trespass. I'm thinking bigger than even a DUI. Now, there are some folks that want to do that for certain reasons, and I get that. But all these jackasses out there that are practicing criminal defense are cramming these down everybody's throat just to make a quick buck.
Interesting.
Because it is a great thing. There's no question. But you might want to look at it through the lens of
somebody else.
Does this make sense? Because right now, we got it sealed. You go, boy. You go, girl. You got it sealed. Okay, yeah, that's great. But then when their first time they, get to not be nervous about their conviction, pops up that it's sealed.
Yeah.
And then they get that question, and they're not prepared for that question. And I don't find that there's a lot of lawyers out there that are honest with this. I think there's a lot of opportunistic sons of people to where I all of a sudden get to feel like you do every day of your life.
And turn down some cases?
Yeah, you turn down a lot of cases that you could monetize on through time immemorial, through years, that don't have a very good probability of a successful outcome.
Yeah.
And you're not scared to try to find a crack in the system. You're not scared, because I've seen miracles out of Westover's place. Westover Law Firm provides miracles. There's no question. But there has to at least be some hope.
Some hope, and even with that some hope, I'm very transparent with, look, this is your son or daughter, so if you're in the position, this is my speech always, if you're in the position where I'm doing whatever it takes, and I'm going to hire somebody, whether it's you or somebody else, I'm taking whatever shot exists in this world to get him out, wife, son, daughter, whatever, brother, husband. If that's where your mindset is right now, then I'm your man.
Yeah.
If your mindset is, I'm coming to you as an attorney, does this have a high probability of winning? Does this have a high probability of success? Give me your straight answer. I don't want to spend $7,000 doing this if not. And then that's where a lot of mine go out the door and feel good about what I've said, but I don't make a dime on it.
Right. And that is rare. And we both know that.
Yeah, I mean, because technically, legally, and ethically, I've done nothing wrong. If there is some way to, everybody's got, and that's the thing that some attorneys take the approach. We can present your claim. Yeah, some take the approach that as a constitutional right, you have a right to have an attorney. Sure. And that right exists whether you're going to win or lose your case. Right. And I'm not promising results, and so here you go. I'll represent you, knowing full well that you're going to lose. I just don't.
And they're probably right that those people
ethically they're not going to get in trouble for that.
They're not going to get in trouble, but the
reputation's going to go.
It's roadside robbery. I think it's just bogus. That said, Bailey said that he wouldn't think the system's fair. Bailey says, I've heard that every time. I've heard it every time. And the reason why we exist for criminal defense, the reason why we're here, the reason why I run this firm this way is to ensure, much like you're saying, with that person that maybe doesn't have the best chance, maybe does, anybody charged from a crime or with a crime doesn't have the best chances from Jump Street. That's why it's not fair. Okay? It should be innocent until proven guilty. The reality in this world is felt by everybody that's thought about it or not. We just hit Bailey cold with it. No, I guess I wouldn't really think it's fair. And he could have, in his own mind, been, duking it out with his neighbor. He might have a neighbor he wants to duke it out with. I wouldn't want to duke it out with Bailey, though. Bailey's got a good left hook. I'm telling you.
I don't want to experience it.
I don't either. You see how he has all his teeth?
Means he hasn't been hit.
Right. He can duck and weave and come out with it. So that said, people come in here already beat down. And so when I look at them, and when our staff here, our criminal defense lawyers here, look at these folks, we're here to give you a fair shake. And we're going to develop this case. But the reality is we're having that conversation you're having with that hypothetical you brought up that you probably have all the time. Yeah. The likelihood of there being no consequence is very, 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 very low. And they'll go to some other chest pounder that'll say, oh, man, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this. But the chest pounder, the blowhard lawyer, is really, really good at blowharding. That's got to be a word, blowharding. Let's look that up. Let's use that in a sentence. They're good at...
Don't look that up.
Yeah, don't look. Yeah, good point. Yeah, no, put the phone down. Put the phone down, Bailey. We will go with a different definition. So they're really good at chest pounding.
Yeah. And
they're beating their chest black and blue, but they're only better at one other thing, apologizing.
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't go the way. You're kind of passing the buck. deflecting.
Yeah, and I see it a ton because for whatever reason, I don't know, and maybe I need to market better, right, Bailey? I don't know. But for whatever reason, I'm getting a lot of the second opinion people.
Yeah.
Meaning, I don't know why they didn't come to me in the first place, but for whatever reason, I'm the trusted guy to come for a second opinion. And sometimes that's just the nature of where you live and
Sure.
who you've been told. And
Yeah.
the nature of my clientele sometimes is their neighbor gives them a card. That's the first person they go to.
Yeah.
If it's my card, great. And if it's not, unfortunately, I get to be the second guy. But I've had a lot of those lately. Yesterday, I had one where, attorney had promised the world, like you said, chest pounded and whatever else. The statute, and guess what statute was, and this will make you laugh. The conviction was endangerment.
Oh.
And the attorney had promised bond, had promised 42B, had promised all these immigration benefits, even said that he'll be out for 6 months and get a residency because he does have a U.S. citizen spouse. So those options technically existed, but the attorney had zero idea or failed to study or didn't want to tell the client that endangerment is a disqualifying crime. He wasn't going to get out on bond. He wasn't going to qualify for anything. So that's what's happened. The guy's now been detained. He's been deported now at this point, and wife comes in to say, hey, the attorney's now telling me that I can get him back up here in 6 months. And
if
I'm going,
she pays.
No, well, yeah, we'll pay more money and whatever else. And I had to say, okay, number one, from the jump, you had bad representation. Like this, they did the work. Ethically, they did nothing wrong.
Right.
But the conversation that they had with you as to the expectations, you've got to be disappointed with. And she was. And I said, and then sticking with them 6 months, if he had no crimes, impossible. No crimes, impossible.
Right.
Adding crime on top of it that needs post-conviction relief, that now a deport on top of it that has a 10-year penalty. You're looking at years, not months. And, that was disappointing news to her, but she stopped me and said, this is refreshing. I now can make plans for life because I kind of had a sneaky feeling that this sounded too good to be true after already months of fighting. He's been in detention for 8 months trying to fight a case that I just basically told her in 30 seconds wasn't even winnable from the beginning. Yeah. And so, I deal with this.
It's life altering, and you had to be the bearer of bad news, but you had to be the bearer of truth. Yeah. That was what it was. And she left there better than she had gone to that attorney in the first place, day one. And
I in this exact same situation we were just talking about, I told her, look, you've got a sliver of hope of doing this. It's going to be a year's battle. It's going to be several waivers. This guy had a couple DUIs in a short amount of time, and that's why he got the endangerment. Yeah. So he's got, some habitual drunkard
arguments. So we'll be seeing him at some point.
Yeah, and so, well, he's gone now. He's in Mexico.
Right. At some
so
point.
Maybe post-conviction relief. I did give you a card for post-conviction relief, so maybe they come over for that. So long story short, I told her, look, he's got a shot somewhere in the same speech. If you are desperate to do whatever you can to bring him back, I know you're living here, you've got kids together, and I know that desperation. I'm here for you. If you just want to cut your losses and go move to Mexico and hang out with your husband for the next little bit, I get that as well. And I think that, and she said as she left, look, if I do anything, I'm coming back here. I'm not going back where I was. Right. And so, you're right. I don't make a dime off that initial, but maybe in the future there's business that comes back.
Honesty and somebody like Bailey that's not used to the system, that already and Bailey's a high information fellow. So he just kind of knee jerk. No, I'm not going to feel like it's going to be fair. And most everybody in here that comes through those doors know that or feel that same way.
Prime example, because I'm a golfer, the Scotty Scheffler case, what's going on there? Yeah. I look at that and go, if this is not Scotty Scheffler, this guy's taking a plea and likely, because the police report was ugly, dragged the guy, tore his pants.
It didn't look good.
All these things that now video evidence disputes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
it's not quite like
regular person, and the cop and the DA may just take a stand. That case got dismissed yesterday.
It did get dismissed. So
deservedly so.
I saw that on a headline, and I had to read a little bit more into it because every time I see headlines now, you've trained me to keep reading.
Read into it.
Yeah. If I'm interested, and otherwise I just forget about it.
And Scotty had an amazing attorney. I've watched his interviews, and he was like, we'll take this to trial, no problem. And we will prevail on this. And he had a very aggressive attorney. He had somebody who obviously knew what they were doing, and he had the money to do that.
Had to have seen So I couldn't say that about Bailey's situation until I see the evidence. So when I see Bailey raw, I'm taking his word for it, and I let him know that. I'm like, listen, Bailey, I understand that this is your side of the story. We're going to gather all the information, and the attorneys and I are going to go over it, and we're going to look at what this is going to look like in front of a jury. So when a lawyer speaks confidently like that, and you can tell the difference between one that's confident, says, yeah, we're going to take this to trial,
and it was, you're right, there was a gap in it, because the first day it was no comment from lawyer,
right?
No comment from Scotty.
So he hired well.
And then obviously police report came out. I mean, the information came out quickly. And so this attorney was able to decipher things really quick.
And videos do either one of two things. I mean, it's really good, or it's
Poor
really
cop
not good.
who comes charging. I don't know if you've seen the video.
Yeah, no,
bro runs like 100 miles per hour and almost breaks the passenger side window to try and get his attention.
It was,
and I didn't. Yeah,
I don't know what that police officer was doing. I don't. Bored maybe. He had to have pulled a muscle. I mean, was somebody timing it the 40? Because he was really cooking.
Aggressive, yeah.
He was really cooking. Look,
and dragging him several feet ended up being like I could. Maybe he went 5 feet, maybe 10 feet.
So next cast, next pod, I want to drop with. So we've talked about, you're not feeling like this is going to be fair. You've seen unfairness throughout the system for sure. I have too. We're going to talk about, and we're going to pod next go about weaponization of the judiciary, weaponization of whatever, the judicial system being a weapon and not what it's supposed to be. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So at least you got an outside idea on where we're going to go. We're looking at Trump being charged with things that are outside the statute of limitations, that are never been felonies before, and now all of a sudden they are. A very strange kind of manipulation of the law. In a very first time we've probably ever seen.
No, the amount of
this on this level.
Prosecution that now a president seems to be opened up to, and it's kind of
on this level, because now it makes dangerous. You think, all right, knowing what we know about Donald Trump, which I frankly don't know, but it seems like I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he had some extramarital things going on with a person and paid that person off. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he was, borrowing hard money loans to do this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying, trafficking children, but I'm saying, build this particular building and whatever.
But I get what you're saying. To use the court as a tool.
Right, as a weapon.
Political tool more than anything else,
right.
Rather than a criminal fact-finding source.
And for people that look at our system the way I wanted Bailey's take on this, because he's a bright, younger male that can look at this and go, how would you feel if you were in that? And him to say, yeah, no, I wouldn't feel like that. I guess my initial, your response is perfect. My initial thought would be, no, it's not going to be fair. He's not alone. I mean, it's like almost everyone with half a brain feels like they just got duped. Most of them know that they might have made a mistake, that they fell short somewhere, whatever. And some of them are just really resolute that they didn't do anything wrong. It was another individual, another set of facts, and help. And so those are kind of, we do see those kind of a lot, and those we lose some sleep over because we want to be economical, but we want to be honest, straightforward with them. This is the way to get the result that you were talking about. And so with Scotty, what is his name? Scotty. Mm-hmm. You want the Scotty result, but Scotty had to pay a lot of money.
I'm sure.
For that result.
For a couple of weeks of representation, I'm sure he paid through the nose.
Right.
And good for him. It worked out.
Right. It worked out, but this guy had to be willing to, this particular attorney had to be willing to turn over every stone, and that does cost a little bit of money. Yeah. And so when, an average individual comes in with a misdemeanor charge, we're between $4,000 and $6,000, depending on what that charge is. And the reality is that's real money to most everybody out there.
Yeah.
And if your expectation is win, lose, or draw. I want because I feel like we have something here. Win, lose, or draw. You get most of that win, lose, or draw within that $4,000 to $6,000. You get most of all of that, but then you're paying for a trial if that evidence doesn't somehow break the back of the state and get a dismissal or something like that. So I don't necessarily want to talk about the money, but the average American of our scores of people listening that have not liked or subscribed yet, they need to, because we're going to be talking about the weaponization of the judiciary, why the courts are now weapons, especially politically. We're seeing that for a first go. This is new, and we probably should have seen the courts being used anyway, well, long before now. But this is out the gate, and it's a little bit shady. What it means to our culture, what it means to our way of life, because we lose. So I'm going to end on this, and then I'll let you have the last word. We lose the judicial system. We lose that fairness, that equilibrium that it's supposed to be. The Lady Justice blinded that equilibrium. We lose that, even though it broke. Remember that, Bailey? I mean, you don't feel like it's going to be fair, even though broke, and we don't believe Lady Justice is blind, and it's that. But there is ways to get justice. There are ways. We are living testaments of that. We've both seen it happen. We've both been very excited about that, and we both work very hard to get there. But when that's being used as a bomb, as a bullet, as a medium to get a business deal done, as a medium to throw off an election, as a medium to sully somebody's reputation, win, lose, or draw, doesn't matter. We're just going to throw these things out there. What do we do, and what does it look like?
No, it's an interesting thought, and something that obviously I've seen happening. And for me, going back to, and we talked about this, my political science major, that's what I graduated in, and whatever else. The judiciary was always the third party, right, that looked outside and looked out for everybody's party's interest. This was the neutral part that kept everybody checked and balanced on the political side, on legal side, of whatever else. And so you just looking at it when you're not dealing with a crime, when you're not the one accused of it, when you're not the one representing it as an attorney. If I was to just look at it when I was in college as a 20-year-old kid, the judiciary is kind of the cool part, right?
Yeah.
They got to be less opinionated, and they got to kind of just make sure everybody was doing
Roll
right. They were
radar.
the big dog on top that made sure everybody was following the rules, and they were the equitable ones.
Meaning fair.
Fair. Sorry, big word. But when you're using them now as the gun and like you said, the weapon in trying to get things done, instead of being the ones to decide whether what you've done is right or wrong, and using them as the avenue to accomplish something, and not the resolution body, puts a different perspective on the judiciary for sure.
I think so too. I think it changes Bailey's answer in a few short years to come to hell no, I'm not going to get a fair shake. I think it changes that. And they already lean towards, no, I don't think so. The cards are stacked against me. And they're not wrong.
Yeah. No,
but it's doable. But now what you just said.
That's why we have jobs, right?
Yeah. Deep. Subscribe. Scores of you.